This is like my first time out since I gave birth.
Woo!
Since I was pregnant, so it's been like a year. So I'm really excited.
You look great!
Yes, you do! That's because I'm wearing a really big dress.
Where's the bear?
Also, that's so I have a book coming out in late spring called The Birds and the Beasts, which is a collection of poetry and stories that are based on fairy tales. I'm going to read one poem from that, and then I'm going to read 2 short stories that have nothing to do with that because I think they're just more fun. So, not that the fairy tales aren't fun, I just feel they're more like quiet reading. So here is a poem from that book on the construction of birds. Consider the nature of boxes, which are all empty, which are all also filled with characters of each different kind, which are all also known as birds. Inside of each bird is the filling of a feather, and each of these feathers is filled with the sound that the hollow in the leg of a bird makes. That the hollow in the leg of a bird makes a sound is not what is important, but that a feather can be filled with a sound is what is important, and this is what should be noted. You may note that each chart on the graph is a feather which carries a map through round metal factors of air with relation to sun or the sum of its parts and compared to each nesting of planets. Complications arise while each girl in the window rests over her hair the metal which hinges around her with force. Each nature of either or which might be buried, providing the layers below desert rock. With removal of rock, divers capture the air, which conducts every group though complex. Within any group, the legs become hollow, but danger of one proves the smoke in the air as an integral force. That the airspace is empty, but is also a crater, but is also a flame, but is also a force, that is also the tract for the bodies, which are also the bodies of birds in our hands. As an absolute sign, the bones of our fingers conspire with deafness to dig below rock, to find water. We pray that the boats will rock still for the air as a proof of the chamber around us. So now I'm going to do something completely different because variety is the spice of life. So this is a short story called Where We Were Going. My mom would make me get holy water from the church up the street. I had a little travel-sized shampoo container I'd use. She wasn't Catholic. She just wanted to make sure everything was clean. She lined up the holy water next to the antibacterial soap and rubbing alcohol and hydrogen peroxide on the counter above where she kept the bleach. She wanted all the bases covered. It made me nervous to go in and get the water, but no one ever stopped me or said anything or asked why I didn't pray. The Catholic school behind the church was another story. Being on the school campus felt just the same as jumping the fence to my old elementary school and sitting on the swings, deserted and safe for whatever you want. I guess that's why I wasn't worried about giving my boyfriend a hand job against the back wall between the hydrangeas. I never ran into a priest in the church itself, so basically what I'm saying is I didn't expect to get caught. Sean didn't really have time to zip his pants back up before we started running. The priest was fast for an old guy, but he only chased us for a minute. He screamed that we'd go to hell, and I shouted behind me that it was okay because I didn't believe in God anyway, but that didn't seem to change his mind about where we were going. We ran for 2 or 3 blocks, but then we had to stop because Sean was fat and I had asthma. We kept walking for a long time, though, because Taco Bell was a mile away. When we stopped running, Sean adjusted his genitals and zipped his jeans back up. He wore black jeans and a band t-shirt every day. Today it was White Zombie, the same t-shirt that he'd been wearing for 3 days in a row. He was so fat that his jeans had been chafing his skin raw where his stomach folded over them. So he'd begun applying duct tape to his skin in that spot like a huge Band-Aid. I never wore clothes 3 days in a row. Once I walked outside, I got dirty. Everything outside the house was dirty, according to my mom. The way to get back inside the house was to go into the garage and strip naked before running straight through the house to the shower. You needed to try not to breathe on the way to the shower because your mouth was filled with germs from the outside. The first thing you did when you got into the shower was wash your hands, and the second thing you did was use mouthwash. Then you washed the rest of your body. The best thing, really, was to just not leave the house at all if it was possible. I got a 7-layer burrito and a Diet Pepsi and a bunch of packets of hot sauce, and Sean got 4 soft tacos and a burrito supreme and a regular Pepsi. We sat across from each other, and some diced tomatoes fell onto his shirt, and I picked them off and told him that I loved him. He was in the slow class at his school. Actually, more than the slow class, maybe. Maybe it was actually the class for retarded kids, because that's what it seemed like when I did his homework for him. But I wasn't totally sure because he went to a different high school than I did. The point is that he was sweet to me, and he never made me feel guilty about anything. Everything that I did was all right with him. I love you too, he replied, but the band always comes first. Sean finished his burrito and pulled a worn black pick from his pocket and practiced on his air guitar. He probably wasn't ever going to be famous, but he could probably get a good union job from his dad, and he would probably always be nice to me, and one day we could have babies and our own house, and I could walk in the front door with my clothes and shoes still on. I took the bottle of holy water out of my backpack and poured a little bit into my Diet Pepsi. "Do you want to get married?" I asked, and he stopped playing his air guitar for a few minutes before he said okay. I'm going to read one more story. It's on my iPhone because it's really hard to keep track of things with the 2-month-old, so I forgot to bring this one, but here it is. This is called Imagination. It was published in Camrock Press Review last year, which is a great journal. I'm looking for something to wear when I find the t-shirt in my best friend's closet. I'm so shocked for a minute that I forget what I'm doing or where I am at all, and then I get a whiff of gin, and I remember that we're on a schedule, sort of. She's waiting for me. She's impatient. She's maybe a little angry that I'd spilled so much gin on myself because that gin had cost her money, and she's in between jobs and 2 months behind in her rent. I rip a glittery-looking wife beater from a hanger, stuff the t-shirt in my purse, and drop my alcohol-soaked top on the ground. I'm ready to dance. Except not really anymore. I'm not ready for anything. The problem is not that I'm wondering where she got the t-shirt or why it says cumbucket.com across the front in big black letters. The problem is that I know. The problem was that last year, when I had meant to type Craigslist into the address bar on my ex's computer, I'd been distracted by a bird slamming straight into the sliding glass window, concussing itself with a smear of blood and feathers and beak bone before dropping to the concrete. The problem was I had only gotten so far as C when I'd heard the bang on the window and jumped from my seat. The problem was that after about 15 seconds, the bird's corpse had become uninteresting, and I'd walked back to his computer, and the address bar had auto-filled itself and directed me to a website that exclusively featured women kneeling down in front of galvanized aluminum buckets filled with horse semen. Most of the women vomit the semen up about halfway through, right back into the bucket. And then they start from square one again. The women who finish the whole bucket get a t-shirt. The problem is that when people tell you your worst enemy is your imagination, they're wrong. When people tell you that whatever you're imagining is probably worse than the real thing, they're wrong. Imagination is never as bad as the internet. The problem is that I don't know which way to be upset. So when I start sobbing in the cab and my best friend turns to me and tells me it's okay, that I don't smell like gin, and that I look pretty, and that my ex didn't deserve me, and that any one of the guys at the club will be lucky to go home with me, all I can do is let her hug me while I press my teary, waterproof lashes against her shoulder. We make the cab pull over so I can throw up, and she rubs Preparation H into the crook of her arms to tighten up the needle holes, and then she hands me a breath mint. I suck on it ferociously, clasp her face between my hands, and look at her hard. Everything will be okay, I tell her, and she laughs.